So here's something I see all the time in my practice. Couples will come in either for their first session or for any subsequent sessions they have, and they'll want to tell me about an argument or a rupture they had during the week. And as they start to get into what happened, invariably one partner's version of events differs greatly from the other partner's. And then they want to get right back into the same argument because they want to tell me about who said what to whom and in what order. And in doing so, their version of the events are quite different, and they begin to debate whose version is correct. And in debating that, what they're trying to do is determine who has the better memory and who has the better perception of what really unfolded in that rupture. And this is something, as I said, I see all the time in my couples. Heck, I do it in my own relationship at times. And really what happens is it doesn't get the partners, the couples, it doesn't get my wife and I very close at all to repairing a rupture that happens. And when ruptures happen in a relationship, really both partners want to get back to a place of connection. However, one of the things that blocks them, that blocks me, maybe it blocks you too, that I see, as I said, in my practice, is that they want to recount the event over and over to determine who has a better memory of that event. And really, this doesn't get the couple very far at all. And being able to repair that rupture and being able to understand what happened, why it happened, and understanding each other at a deeper level. It really stops growth. It stunts growth in the couple. On one level, I get this. I understand because we all need to have our version of reality validated. We only know who we are by our experiences with others. Because other people have validated us, we have been reflected in others' eyes. That's how we built a sense of self in the first place. So I'm not Pollyannish enough to say that it's not necessary to have our version of reality validated, because I do think on some level it is. But at the same time, what really bogs couples down, what keeps them stuck, is when they hold so tightly to their version of reality that they can't make any room for another version that might have occurred, for anybody else's perception of what might have happened. They get so locked in their own perception. We all want to be validated for our feelings and our perceptions of the event. And that kind of validation, again, it creates more of a cohesive sense of self. When we can be validated for the way we see things, for our feelings, then we feel less crazy. We feel more in touch with reality. It creates a more cohesive sense of self. This is the whole piece behind gaslighting, right? Gaslighting is a toxic defense mechanism where one person is trying to convince another person that their version of reality is either consistently skewed or unreal. And if that goes on for too long, I've certainly seen it in my practice, maybe you've experienced it in your own life, it can create a fragmentation in our sense of self. Unlike cohesion, which we can hold ourselves together by a sense of validation of what we think, feel, and believe through others, when we've been gaslighted, it's just the opposite. We become more fragmented, more undone, more unhinged, if you will, because our version of what we truly believe doesn't match what other people are saying. So when our partners make us feel like our experience is foreign or wrong, then we begin to question ourselves. And so validation is very important on some level, but we can't hold so tightly to our own experience of what's happening that we lose any empathy for other people's experience. And this is where I see empathy playing such a huge role in partnerships, in relationships, in marriages, because it's only through empathy that we can begin to truly understand other people's perceptions of what might have happened. It's only through empathy that we can begin to understand and make room for other perceptions. So today isn't really about different perceptions. What today is about is how might we as couples and partners in relationships break out of this deadlock that we get into when we start arguing with our partners about whose version of reality is correct. And what I call this is second level communication versus first level communication. So talking about the rupture at the level of the event is what I would call the first level of communication. And we're going to talk about how to break out of that by talking at a second level of communication. I'll explain all that in detail in just a few minutes. Let's get started.
Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship, a podcast that provides support and guidance to help heal the wounds of attachment trauma. Whether you find yourself struggling with unresolved issues in the past or have experienced trauma in your current relationship, our goal is to provide accurate, scientifically informed information as well as the tools to help you create a secure connection between you and your partner. And here's your host, Tom Philp.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is two different levels of communication in our relationships, for your marriages, for you and your partner. And as I said, what happens is couples oftentimes get locked in these silos of their own experience of an event, and it's very difficult for them to try to make room for any other interpretations of it. And so we can talk about what happened. We could talk about ruptures in our relationships on two different levels. The first level is the level of the event. So what happened? Who said what to whom and in what order? This is how I often refer to level one. It usually doesn't work well for partners and couples when they try to discuss the event at this level. Because what ends up happening is they both get defensive and their perception of the event is skewed anyways. Each person thinks they have a valid perception of the event, when really what is happening is their perception was narrowed by the strong emotion that they were feeling. That's part of what neuroscience has taught us, is that when we are flooded, when our heart rate increases to 100 beats per minute, then the neurons tend to fire much more excessively in the amygdala area of our brain, which is a midbrain structure. And that is where our emotions are housed. That is closely related to the fight or flight systems that are created in our brainstem. So all that's firing together. And what happens is the prefrontal cortex, the area right behind our forehead, it sort of drains of blood. And we don't have as much firing going on there. So everything is being filtered through this strong emotion, and we use it as a lens in which we view the event. This is why witness testimonies in trials, as we have learned more and more, are oftentimes very unreliable because we simply don't have a didactic or complete memory of events as they unfolded. Sometimes we add things to the event. Sometimes we take it away. And we do that because all events are filtered through our perceptions. They are filtered through our feelings and our thoughts, and especially thoughts that we've already had, these templates we use, things that we already know, we superimpose on these situations because that is the most economical way for us to assimilate new information, is to integrate it into what we already know. So all this is happening inside of us. All this is happening outside of our awareness. And as I said, it tends to skew the events. So this produces more defensive cycles in couples as we then try to debate at a level one about what happened. And so what the couple needs to do is they need to learn how to communicate ruptures and events at what I call level 2 or a second level, which means they need to communicate about their thoughts, feelings, and their perceptions of the event, not the event itself. Let me rephrase that, because this is something that I think happens daily in my work with couples, is they need to learn how to communicate about what happened through their thoughts, feelings, and perceptions of the event, not the event itself. Discussing the event itself is a level 1 communication. Discussing your thoughts, feelings, and perceptions is level 2. So communicating at level 2 usually produces much better results for the couple and produces better repair attempts, as well as emotional growth for the couple as well. So what does level 2 look like? Well, let me kind of script out a couple of things about what it might sound like if we're communicating at a level 2 as opposed to a level 1. So first of all, we might communicate our thoughts. This is a thought of level 1 versus a thought of level 2. Level 1. I know what you meant by that. You can't convince me otherwise. When you said this, you did it because you were trying to hurt my feelings. You knew that would push my buttons, and you were trying to hurt me in that moment. That's discussing it at level 1. Level 2. When you use that tone, I feel like, I think I'm often in trouble, and I want to pull away, and I want to go hide in a hole somewhere because I don't like feeling like I'm in trouble with you. And so that tone often makes me think I'm in trouble. Hear the difference? Level 1, you're saying that you know what the motivation of your partner was, and you're accusing them of that motivation and trying to hurt you. Level 2 is telling you what your thoughts are when they use that particular tone. All right, what about from a feelings perspective? What might you say from a level 1 versus a level 2? So feelings of level 1. I get so angry when you use that tone because I know that you're trying to talk down to me, and you know it's a trigger for me, and you're only doing it to hurt me, and you say that every single time. It always comes up. Notice I'm using always, the extremes of conversations that we never should use, always and never. Nobody does everything always and never, but we tend to throw it out in the heat of the moment, don't we? So you always use that tone with me, and you know it drives me nuts, and it just makes me crazy. So that's feelings from a level 1 perspective. What about a level 2 perspective? Might sound something like this. When you use that tone, I feel talked down to like I'm a child, and it really makes me feel ashamed, like I'm a bad person. Again, you're talking about it from a level 2, so you're describing what's happening inside of you from a thought and a feeling perspective. You're not focusing on what the person did. You're focusing on the impact it had on you. And I'm going to say that again because that's another little nugget here that I say to my couples often. Can you say that, I might say to one of my partners, can you say that by focusing on the impact it had on you, not so much what they did or said? And so it really causes them to stop sometimes and to shift and to have to rethink, oh, wait a minute, you want me to speak from my own thoughts and feelings and perspectives, not focus on their behavior, not focus on the thing that triggered me? That's correct. I'm asking you to speak from the impact, not speak from what they did that caused the trigger. So here's a third one. What about level of perception? Now, I've kind of gotten to some of these a little bit with the thoughts and feelings, but what would a level of perception be like if we were to speak to that with our partner from a level 1 versus a level 2? So perception from a level 1 might sound like this. I know that you are trying to hurt me when you say that. And when you do that, it makes me just want to think, I can't do this anymore in our relationship. You're driving me crazy. I know what happened. You can't convince me otherwise. I'm 100% right, and you'll never prove me wrong. That's level one. A level two perception might sound like this. When you use that tone, I feel like I'm being scolded by my mother, and we both know what my mother was like. So I go back to this place where I can't get away from these feelings of a crazy woman who never wanted to understand me or listen to my side of the story. And it sends me this place where I feel like I'm scolded like a child, and it makes me just want to shut down, and I feel like a bad person, and I would just want to hide in a hole, and I want to move away from you. I just want to get as far away as possible. That's what happens to me when I hear this, when I hear that tone. So this is kind of an example of what does it sound like if we were able to move from a level one communication with our partner about an event versus a level two communication. Level two is deeper. Level two gets us much closer to repair. Level two is less defensive. Level two is focused more on our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions of the event, and not on what our partner did that might have caused the trigger. I really believe that in being able to move from a level one to a level two communication for couples, that you're going to get much closer to being able to hear your partner, to being able to use empathy to step into your partner's shoes, to being able to expand your perception of the event, so that you can add a whole nother perception, not just yours, but your partner's perception of what really happened as well. And this oftentimes gets us much closer, much faster to making better repair attempts. So in your next rupture you have with your partner, and again, I want to emphasize that there will be another rupture, and that's okay, because ruptures are a normal and healthy part of all relationships. We shouldn't fear conflict. We shouldn't fear ruptures, because when we make the repairs to those ruptures, then we deepen our understanding of ourselves, we deepen our understanding of our partner, and we begin to grow together in our relationship. And by using level two communication, that's a useful tool to get you to growing faster, deeper, and better with your partner. Hey, I want to thank you again for listening and tuning in. We've got people from all over the world listening to this podcast, and I just can't thank you enough. Please respond. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. I'd love to even be able to create a podcast in the future and be able to answer some of those burning questions you guys have. So feel free to respond. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear more of. And until then, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to Trauma-Free Relationship, a podcast for the healing of attachment trauma. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website at traumafreerelationship.com. Be sure to look for our next episode on your favorite streaming service.